Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayavdire Nashtakayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschadeshitarane Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langate girim yatvatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Parmanam Parmadhanam. I'm coming! So the Ajamila Katha appears in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Why are the ladies hiding there? Please come forward and sit over here. You don't have to hide over there. Only maybe with the babies they can be on that side. Those babies were nice babies can be here. Please come. Please come forward. Please. No, baby to watch. Okay.
So the Ajamila Katha, it appears in the 6th canto of the So it appears in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And for those who are not aware, the Srimad Bhagavatam is an exchange that happened between two Paramhamsas, between two great devotees, between Maharaj Parikshit and between Sukadeva Goswami. So Maharaj Parikshit is the grandson of Arjun, the son of Abhimanyu, and because of a series of events that are described in the 1st canto, Maharaj Parikshit is cursed by a Brahman to die in 7 days. So when he heard about this curse, he was the emperor of the world. He was ruling in the lineage of the Pandavas. So when he heard about this curse, so he gave up his kingdom, he gave up his family, everything he gave up in a very short notice. And then he sat on the southern bank of the river Ganges with the resolve of fasting to death. So that place where he sat and where the Bhagavatam was spoken is currently in Uttar Pradesh. It's called Shukratal. And later on, the same Bhagavatam was spoken again to the 88,000 sages of Naimisharanya, which is also in Uttar Pradesh. It's close to Lucknow. There. So when Parikshit Maharaj sat, and he was a Raj Rishi, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. Then many sages from all over the universe, sages like Vishwamitra, Bhrigu Muni, and Narad Muni, very, very exalted sages, Maitreya Rishi, Vyasadeva, they all congregated there, saying that we will sit with you here while your days for the remaining 7 days. And Parikshit Maharaj, in the mood of a pure devotee, that when he has Vaishnava Sangha, then what does he want to do? He wants to do Krishna Katha. So recognizing that he is in such exalted company, so he places 2 questions before the sages. that what is the duty of a person and what is the duty of a person who is about to die. The 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam are essentially an answer to these two questions. So, in the course of the conversations, so the Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses divided into 12 cantos. The 6th canto appears right in the middle. Even though it's an organic conversation with Parishad Maharaj asking questions, and Sukadeva Goswami, who was the primary speaker of the Bhagavatam, the son of Srila Vyasadeva, he was answering the questions. But we see that also it develops in a very systematic way. The essential tenets of spirituality. So the 6th canto is also a point where Parishad Maharaj, he summarizes what he has heard so far. So it's a good point to begin because we haven't, of course, read the first 5 cantos together. But for us, for our benefit, Parishad Maharaj will summarize it at a very high level. He summarizes, and then he places certain questions before Sukadeva Goswami, and in answering that question, Sukadeva Goswami will recount a very wonderful pastime that happened in ancient times, which is that of Ajamila. So that's the mood of the Puranas. The Puranas, they express very elevated and complex spiritual thoughts through the media of pastimes. Because it's very easy for us to sit and listen to katha, to stories, to pastimes, even though they are factual, but it's easy for us to sit and listen, and in doing so, also absorb the underlying philosophical facts. So, if you see the Bhagavad Gita, it's a little different. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is just speaking the tattvas. This is who I am, this is the process of karma yoga, this is the process of jnana yoga, what is the difference, how do they relate. So he's speaking basically hardcore philosophy. But in the Bhagavatam, even though the philosophy also is spoken in conversations, but we see a lot of these pastimes also appearing, and that's why people's mind and hearts get attracted to them, and when they're listening to it, they also extract the philosophy and they develop faith in it. So we'll begin with the. So I won't read each and every verse, but just a few verses and have discussion on them. Si parikshit vacha nivriti marga katita adau bhagvata yata krama yoga palabdena brahmana yad samritihi. So Parishad Maharaj is, as I said, that he is summarizing. So he is telling Sukadeva Goswami that earlier on you described to me what is the Nivritti mark. So when we execute the process of spirituality, there are two paths that people take based on their desires, based on their propensity. So Nivritti mark is one of renunciation. So some people, when they take to spirituality, they will leave the material conception. So they may leave their family, they will leave their jobs, they may go to a secluded place, probably a holy place, and then they will execute their bhakti over there. So that's Nivritti mark. So Nivrit means that divesting yourself away of it. So this is spoken in the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam. So Parishad Maharaj is going canto by canto. So he's speaking from the second canto because the first canto is essentially establishing the framework, establishing the basis, the philosophical basis. The conversation actually starts in the second canto. So then he says Nivritti Marg Kathata, that you've already spoken about the Nivritti Marg, Ado Bhagavata Yata, by which one can attain the lotus feet of Krishna, then Krama Yoga Palabhim. So Krama Yoga Pala, so this is a particular kind of advancement that is spoken of in the second canto. So there are two kind of muktis. One is Shabda and one is Krama. And again, because Krishna is in the mood of reciprocating to the free will of the devotee, so it depends on what the devotee wants. So in some cases, when the devotees perfect their life, they say, Abbas, I'm done with this material world, I want to go back to the spiritual world. So what does Krishna do at that time? He takes the soul back to him, to the spiritual world. That is Shabda. In some cases, the devotee says that I'm fully attached to you, Krishna, but I still want to see what else is there in this creation of yours. So they still have the desire not to materially enjoy, but to see and appreciate Krishna's creation. So for those, they will gradually elevate themselves into successively higher planets. So they will go to Svarg Lok, Jan Lok, Tap Lok, until they finally go to Brahma Lok, which is a lok for Lord Brahma. And from there they go back to Godhead. So the second canto.
Prabhu, I have a question. So when they, do they spiritually advance also in their rebirths?
They do. It's a good question. They do spiritually advance, but they don't fall. So there's always. So when you're practicing bhakti, there is considered to be a point of no return, which means that very, very unlikely to fall back from there. So once you cross the stage of what is called anartha nivritti, then very, very unlikely. Now, jiva is free will; they can always do it, but very, very unlikely to regress. So these are devotees who have crossed beyond that stage. But yes, they do continue to make further and further spiritual advancements.
So they are Uttamadhikaris.
They are actually, they are in the category of Uttamadhikaris. And even though externally it may appear that they are looking to enjoy Svargloka, but the real curiosity is to appreciate Krishna through his creation. So that's, when there's, even in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, we get a glimpse of that. When you see anything that is fabulous and wonderful, then if you appreciate it in relationship to Krishna, then it is a form of devotional service. Okay. So, so those following this path of Nivritti Marg will ultimately go back to Godhead after having witnessed all the wondrous creations of Krishna. So Parishit Maharaj, he first summarizes the second canto of the Bhagavatam. Now in the next verse, he will summarize the third canto of the Bhagavatam. Pravriti lakshanaschaiva traigunya vishaye mune yo asabalinina prakrate gunasarga puna puna. So these are the people who are following the Pravriti Marg. So Nivritti Marg is one in which you give up, nivrit. Pravritti marg is that you perform bhakti while fully engaged in the material conception. So, if a person is a grahastha, he stays in the grahastha ashram, he continues to support his family, his society, and while doing so, he also attempts to advance in devotional life. So, so what is another name for pravritti marg?
युक्त वैराग्य.
Huh?
युक्त वैराग्य.
Sorry?
युक्त वैराग्य.
No, another name for pravritti marg is varnashram dharma.
Oh.
So that's what varnashram dharma. That's what varnashram dharma teaches us. That there are prohibitions, but there are also allowances. That grasta can accumulate money. Now, generally under the Vedic conception, accumulating money is considered to be sinful. But for grasta, that is allowed. You can accumulate money, but then what is the injunction that comes along with it? That try and use it for charity. So, a Kshatriya, the Kshatriya can kill. In the Vedas, killing is considered to be sinful, but the Kshatriyas are allowed to kill. But then what's the injunction that comes along with it? That kill only when upholding dharma. So that is the nature of pravritti marg. So pravritti marg, traigunya vishaya. So what are the traigunya? The traigunya are, so in this verse, traigunya means two things. Traigunya is the three modes of material nature. So as long as one is strongly anchored in the material conception, they will act according to the combination of the three modes that they are in. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, or mode of ignorance, satagun, rajagun, or tamagun. Traigunya is also the three aspects of artha, kam, and dharma, artha, and kam. So the chatur purusharthas that are recommended for those who are following the varnashram dharma is dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. So dharma is the basis, that whatever you do following the principle of religion. Following the principles of religion, you can engage in kam, which means you can enjoy religiously. Similarly, according to the scriptures, you can artha. Artha is economic prosperity, that you can accumulate wealth or prosperity, and then so these are the traigunya. All three of them leading to moksha. So so this is the essence of the summary of the third canto, Guna Sarga Puna Puna. So Puna Puna means that Parikshit Maharaj is indicating that this is a long process. That again and again the person will take birth. They will depending upon their attraction to dharma, their attraction to material enjoyment, they may take birth in different varnas, different ashrams, make a little bit of advancements, take one step forward, half a step back. So puna, again and again they will follow. Now there is a third path that Parikshit Maharaj does not speak in this, because it will be introduced after this, and that is, so we did pravritti marg, we did nivritti marg. There is a third marg which is called Bhagavad Vidhi. So Bhagavad Vidhi is neither or both pravritti and nivritti marg. So Bhagavad marg is one of exclusive Ananya Bhakti. It's one of exclusive devotion. So because of the mood of exclusive devotion, one develops detachment from the material conception of ownership. So that nivritti comes internally. But again, because of that mood of strong devotion, one uses everything and anything in the service of Krishna. So externally it looks like pravritti. So those who are following the Bhagavad Gita will even use the varnashram dharma in the service of Krishna. So that appears, that will appear later on. So those who are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they follow the Bhagavad Gita. And as Indulekha was saying, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is Yukta Vairagya. That Yukta means that you're completely invested. And Vairagya means that you're completely renounced. So the Yukta is the pravritti and the Vairagya is the nivritti. And the reason that this is possible is because of the internal state of mind. That one understands that everything can be used in the service of Krishna. So if one, Srila Prabhupada gives the example that you can live in a big house and have deities in your house, and then deities, the house belongs to the deities. There. So a Vaishnava living in a big house will consider himself to be a caretaker of the house on behalf of the Vaishnavas and the deities. So it's said that the real purpose of a house for a Vaishnava is to serve other Vaishnavas and to serve the deities. So when that conception is there, even though externally the person will say, look, this person has such a big house, it would look completely the same as the neighbor, who probably has the same kind of house, but it is different because of the difference in the conception of ownership. And the succession of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and especially coming from Srila Prabhupada, is Bhagavad Gita, because in the current day and age, Nivritti Marg is very difficult to do. So there may be people who renounce and go, but maintaining that purity of that is required for renunciation is very difficult. And because of that lack of purity, then they ultimately they do what is called a renouncing renunciation. So they come back to the mode of enjoyment. Or worse still, they start following what is known as Phalgu Vairagya, which is false renunciation. That they might appear renounced, but when nobody is looking, then they're strongly engaged. Like the example is given of the monkeys in Vrindavan. That the monkeys, they will sit on the wall and they will appear completely as if they are meditating. They won't look at you, and they're appearing that they're sadhus. But then as soon as you become a little careless, they'll come and snatch away whatever they can snatch. If you're wearing glasses, they'll snatch away your glasses. If you have fruits in your house, they'll snatch away the fruits. So that's Phalgu Vairagya, false renunciation. Therefore, to show other people you're completely renounced, and then behind the scene you're completely invested. So, since Nivritti Marg is so difficult and Pravritti Marg is so slow, then Krishna gave for our benefit the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually not the best of the both, but beyond the best, because of our direct connection with the personality of Godhead, the advancement that we make is far more rapid than even in Nivritti Marg. And the debilitating influence of the material attachment is is highly minimized, much more than the Pravritti Marg. So it is beyond the best of both the worlds. Adharma lakshana nana chanuvardhanaha Manusrita cha vyakhyata adya swayam bhuyataha. So, in the fourth canto, Sukadeva Goswami, he described the lineage of Maharaj Uttanpad. So Swayambhavu Manu had two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanpad, and the fourth and fifth cantos is the lineage of Uttanpad and Priyavrata. So who's the great devotee who comes in the lineage of Uttanpad?
Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj.
Dhruv Maharaj comes in the lineage of Uttanpad. He's the son of Maharaj Uttanpad, and Uttanpad is the son of Swayambhavu Manu. So the fourth canto is essentially a demonstration of how can one execute bhakti even if the person has not completely transcended the modes. So sometimes we think that out of humility, we think that we're so fallen, we are so contaminated. How can we approach Krishna? He's so pure, and so out of fear we say better not to follow through. But in the fourth canto, three kinds of devotees are spoken about. The first one that is spoken about is Daksha Maharaj. And Prajapati Daksh, as you know, he was bhakti in the mode of ignorance. What was Daksha's main quality? No, I would not say main quality. But what was Daksha's quality that bubbles up very frequently? That was his anger. He used to get very angry. He was a Prajapati, a great personality, but he got so angry that his son-in-law was Lord Shiva, and he did not invite him to the yajna. He was so angry that when his own daughter Sati, she immolated herself, he said, "Okay, no worries, let's let the yajna continue." Right? But still, he is considered to be a devotee of Krishna. So that is bhakti in the mode of ignorance. Why is he considered as a devotee of Krishna? Because he got personal audience of Krishna. Because the service that Krishna gave him was, as a Prajapati, you have to create offsprings for this universe, and that's what he performed severe austerities to make himself qualified for it. When Krishna appeared before him, that was the benediction he asked. He could have asked for any benediction. That please give me the shelter of your lotus feet. Please make me detached from the material world. But after his austerity, when Krishna appeared, what did he ask? He said, "May I have lots of children?" Krishna said, "So be it." And he did have lots of children. Of course, Narad Muni would make them all brahmacharis. So then he cursed Narad Muni also. So that is bhakti in Tamoguna. Then we see bhakti in Rajoguna, which is Dhruv Maharaj. And why is it in Rajoguna? Because what was the impetus of his bhakti? The impetus of his bhakti was pride. That I need to have a kingdom that is bigger than my father. And he was a 5-year-old boy, but he didn't stop there. He said, bigger than my grandfather, who is Swayambhavu Manu. He didn't stop there. He said, bigger than my great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. Right? So that was his desire, that he wanted a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma. And Krishna gave him. So Dhruva is actually higher than Brahma. Even when the universe is destroyed, Dhruva is not destroyed. So we know that he executed bhakti because he got personal audience of Krishna. Right? And when he gave up his body, then the Vishnu Dutas from Vaikuntha Lok personally came to take him back. And then the fourth canto talks about bhakti in the mode of goodness. And it talks about Maharaj Priyavrata. And Maharaj Priyavrata is it Maharaj Priyavrata or I think I'm forgetting the name. It'll come to me. But he was the son of Maharaj King Vena, and his
Prithu Maharaj.
Prithu Maharaj. So thank you. So this is Maharaj Prithu, and he executed bhakti in Satoguna, in the mode of goodness. He gave very nice instructions to his praja. He preached the path of pure devotional service. So, so Parikshit Maharaj is now recollecting that. Now he's also saying that Narkas Chardhamma. So he's also talking about the fifth canto. So, which is basically the reason now the sixth canto will be spoken. That in the fifth canto, Sukadeva Goswami also described the various hells that are there in this material universe. So in the 26th chapter, he describes the 28 kinds of hellish planets that are there, and he describes them in considerable details. What's going on over there? What kind of people go over there? What happens to them over there? So he mentions that you have also spoken about Narka. So Narka is essentially Nara, which is Nar means men or I guess women also. And Ka means activities. So Narak is where people go because of their karmas, because of the various activities. So in the next two verses, Parikshit Maharaj, he summarizes the rest of the fifth canto, in which Sukadeva Goswami he gives a more touristy description of the material universe. He talks about the heavenly planets, the middle planets, the lower planets. He talks about the various kinds of vegetation, trees, different species of animals. So he takes Parikshit Maharaj on a tour of the universe. He says in this planet people have these kinds of siddhis, and the women are described in these ways. These are the typical activities. And so one of the interesting things I found out was that sometimes we say that the lower planetary systems are, or it's depicted like, Patal, Talatal, Atal, but actually they are very opulent planets. People over there have a lot of cities, and they live long lives, and they have tremendous facilities for material enjoyment. But the reason they're called lower planets because Krishna is absent over there. So they have everything, much more than that is present. So the Earth is the middle planet where we have a little bit of both. We have a mixture of the higher and the lower planets, but Prabhupada describes it as godless material opulence. The godless material opulence is basically a characteristic of the lower planetary system, and the God-centered piety is a characteristic of the higher planetary system. And we find both of them. As time goes on, it's more of the former, but we find a mixture of both of them.
I have a question here. So if the lower planetary systems, those planets have much more opulence and whatever material comfort, and why would the people from there want to get out from here? What's the impetus for them to? They're having a good time. They're enjoying the material comforts, the material opulences, and
You're right. There isn't much. That's why they're called lower planets. But once the people go there, then they tend to stay over there. And the same condition is also in the upper planetary system. Because the suffering is very limited, once the people go there, there is not much of an impetus for them to leave. There, in the upper, the Swarga Lok and the higher planets, the people are enjoying piously. Krishna is there. In the lower planets, the people are enjoying, they're not enjoying impiously. So the residents of the lower planets are actually more expert in the Vedas than in the upper planets. They understand. So how do they get the siddhis? By following the procedures in the Vedas. But the difference is that they see it separate from Krishna. That's why they're called lower planetary system. And that's why it said that once a person falls over there, then because there is a very strong mood of enjoyment, very little suffering. The desire to take to Krishna consciousness is very weak over there.
But is there birth, death, old age, disease?
They still have that. So they still have that. So that's the only suffering they have. They still have birth, of course. They still have death. Srila Prabhupada once gave the example, he compared America with India. And he said in India people are suffering. And because of that suffering, they say, hey Bhagwan, help me, help me. In America there is so much opulence, there is no need for the people to call to, oh Jesus or oh God or whatever it is. But they still die. Everybody dies. So they still have the same Janmamrityu Jara Vyadhi, all that going on. But the pressing need is not there. That for the general mass of course this is 60s when India was a lot more poorer, that the general mass that he said in India where people are suffering on a day-to-day basis, they're thinking of Krishna or they're thinking of something that is non-material, maybe not Krishna but somebody else, but they're forced to think because of the nature of the suffering. Later on in the Bhagavatam, I believe in the 8th canto, it is said that even the demigods aspire to take birth on the earth planet because of this unique quality that there is sufficient enjoyment for you to recognize it and aspire for it, and there is sufficient suffering for you not to develop attachment for it.
Is this awareness there for the people in the Naraklok, the hellish planets? In the Naraklok, the hellish planets?
In the lower planet, it is much more both. In the higher planets and the lower planets, it is much more mitigated. It's much more covered there because the quality of the enjoyment is very, very strong over there. So that's why they say that, of course, there it doesn't talk about the lower planet. It says that people from the heavenly planets, they aspire to take birth on the earth for this reason. Now, the other planets, they are different. They are not from the middle, higher, and lower planetary system. The hellish planets, they are different. Those 26 planets. So there, the suffering is so strong that itself bewilders the mind of the person. There is no opportunity for them to take to devotional service. So then an example is given as that if a person is suffering so intensely that just the suffering is completely occupying their mind, then very difficult for the person to take to bhakti. There. So there has to be some alleviation of the suffering. There has to be some engagement with enjoyment so that you know, I have a little bit of it, now I would like to get more of it. How can I get more of it? If enjoyment is completely absent, then the person doesn't even know about it. All that they are doing is trying to get by from the day-to-day suffering there. Okay, any other questions, comments? Maharaj, his mind is kind of stuck on the description of the hellish planets that Sukdev Goswami has given. He said, Adunaya Mahabhaga, is glorifying him, and he's saying, Yatanev Narakanara. That you also, now he already had mentioned this, but he's repeating it again, that you also spoke about the yatna, the suffering of the Nara in the Narak. You spoke about that. So, Radha Govind Maharaj, when he speaks on this verse, he says that a unique characteristic of these hellish planets is that when you enter there, then you get a special body that is known as a Yatna Sharir, which is specially designed to increase your experience of pain. So if you prick a pin here, you may have some pain. If you do it in there, then the pain is magnified 1,000,000 times over. The other aspect of this body is that you do not have the ability to leave it or to lose consciousness. So here we have this like a fail-safe, that if the pain exceeds a certain threshold, then the body switches off and then you lose consciousness. It's a benediction that we have. But that is not there. That switch is absent over there. So that's why Parikshit Maharaj, in the mood of a devotee, Prabhupada in the purport says that a devotee is paradukha dukhi. So he's not concerned about himself. He knows that he's going back to Godhead. Even when he was in the womb of his mother, Krishna came and personally saved him and gave him darshan. All through his life, he lived piously, and now he's in the association of exalted devotees. So he's not worried about himself. He's also not making idle chatter. He's not like saying that, what happens to those guys who are living down there. Not in that mode. But paradukhi. That a true Vaishnava, for him the sufferings of the other person are sometimes more intense than the suffering that the person might experience himself. The Prahlad Maharaj prays that to Narasimhadev. In the 7th canto, he prays that please help these materially engrossed people, because unknowingly they're following such a treacherous path that results in so much of suffering. This is when Narasimhadev said, "You take a benediction," and Brahma said, "I don't need any benediction. I have you. What do I need any benediction for?" And then Narasimhadev said, "No, you take a benediction." He said, "Okay, if you have to give me a benediction, then please help these people who are suffering so many lifetimes over and over. So here he is saying that Yatanat Mayat, that in that Yatna Sharir, they experience so many suffering. And here, of course, he is compressing it. But if you read the 5th canto, then Parikshit Maharaj speaks about it elaborately. That what are the different kinds of punishments for different kinds of sins. If you take intoxication, then they make you drink molten iron. And not just 1 peg or 2 peg, but for thousands of years, the Yamdutas will pour molten iron down your throat. And if you steal somebody else's property, then birds will come and pluck out your eyes. And then different descriptions, very graphic descriptions are given there. So naturally, Parikshit Maharaj he's perturbed, and he's saying that from what I can understand, you're saying everybody will go to hell because the conditions because of which a person can go to hell are innumerable. So here he says that sins that are done by thoughts, by words, and by actions. Because of any of these three, the Yamdutas will come and take you, and there is appropriate punishment. Now, in the age of Kali, we have this concession that sins that we commit in our mind, they don't accrue any actual sins. Pious activities that we commit in our mind, we actually get the pious reactions for that. But sinful activities we actually have to do. But again, in the age of Kali, the opportunity to do sinful activities are also very, very prominent. So what Parikshit Maharaj has concluded, that if not everybody, almost everybody is going to go to the hellish planet. So he's saying you have to give some solution. You have to give some way by which a person is protected from this prolonged intense suffering that is in store in the hellish planets. How are we doing with time?
Yeah, to complete it now, finish it. Wrap it up. We have to do the Damodarashtakam also.
Okay, so we'll stop here. So next time what we'll discuss, so now Sukhdev Goswami will offer three possible solutions for persons to protect themselves from going into the hellish planets. And as part of that, to illustrate the solution, he will then speak the Ajamila Katha. So we'll stop over here. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Do you want to finish it?
No. The hellish planets are actually subtle planets, and they're completely different. They're different from Naraklok.
Yeah, because I used to also get confused with the same thing. Because when we say, the Swarg and Nark, then we have always understood Swarg is like, heavenly, and Nark is hellish.
Right.
But according to Bhagavatam, they are different.
They're different. So they're subtle. The gateway to the hellish planet is Pitraloka. So Pitraloka is defined as the administrative office for the Naraklok. So there all the punishment etc. is being figured out. This person gets this 20 lashes, 50 lashes, whatever is happening. But in Naraklok, there are only two kinds of people. There are the Yamdutas who are beating up, and then there are the Jivas who are getting beaten up. So there's no life over there. It's not that, in Naraklok you go and you have you live a life. It's just a place of where you are there to expunge the sins that you have committed. When you expunge the sins, then based on your situation, then you take birth in one of the 14 lokas. It's kind of a jail. Within a jail also, it's like a place. Like jail, you can live a life in a jail, so to speak, right? But I guess within a jail, there may be places where you go and you're just waiting up over there. So
The cell.
it's like a cell.
Having TV, having AC machine, everything.
So in our cloak, like I said, there's no existence beyond the suffering. But that does not mean that it is short. Sukhdev Goswami says that people can live for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 10 million years in the Narak. It just depends upon how much sins that is accrued for them. Okay, so we'll do the Damodarashtakam for those who don't know. So they are